honored to have such a powerful group of change makers leading today's conversation. Let's now move into the heart of our discussion, right? And our first topic is understanding autism and the broader spectrum of neurodiversity. So let's begin at the foundation. What exactly is neurodiversity and how is it connected to autism?
Anyone can go ahead.
Repeat the question, please.
What exactly is neurodiversity and how is it connected to autism?
So I'm going to answer from a parental standpoint. So neurodiversity, from how I understand it, is how my child, for example, thinks differently from a neurotypical or a typical child. So for example, she may have a car. Instead of driving the car this way, she may be fascinated with the wheels. So her way of processing things and looking at things are a bit different. Even though she can play with the car in the average way or a typical way, she's also fascinated with an atypical way. So as it relates to ASD, it's a form of neurodiversity, but it's not the only thing that's in neurodiversity. Because you have persons that have Down syndrome, you have persons that have a global developmental delay, and you have other aspects apart from ASD. So for me personally, why I love to be on this panel is that my child or the persons who I'm advocating for is not just persons who have autism. You have global developmental delays, and if we're going to speak about neurodiversity, we need to speak about everything, not just autism, which is common, but oftentimes misdiagnosed. So I'm not sure if anybody else wants to jump in from a more professional standpoint.
Give a perspective on that, and I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Mrs. Lee White. I'm a doctoral candidate in education. I have a master's degree in special education.
Volume, please, because
And I have a master's degree in special education, and I've been a licensed special education teacher since 2015 in the state of Georgia. I've also been licensed since 2010 to work as a speech language pathologist assistant in the state of Florida. So just to give you guys a little background about me, and my bachelor's degree is in communicative disorders and sciences. So what I wanted to just say, I feel like what Danae shared was a good, share to the group. But I just wanted to say that autism is more like it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So it makes it, I would say, would fall under being like neurodivergent, like other disorders like dyslexia and ADHD and things like that, to help the audience understand when we're speaking on like neurodiversity as a whole, and that's how they connect. So I would say autism falls under that umbrella. Does that make sense?
Yes, Ms. Martin here. I'd like to second what really says, but also autism on its own spectrum. Many parents are really struggling with the fact that comes with this diagnosis. You may have a child that is diagnosed as being mild or moderate or even severe, and all three categories of diagnosis comes with its own specialties. And sometimes parents are placed in a position where they don't really want to open up to the public about what they're going through because of the stigma, and also because of what they believe is some kind of guilt trip on their part, because actually you give birth to this child and the child is not the typical perfect child. And so how society wants us to believe that that child has to be, and also to be accepted. And because there's not much awareness and also knowledge on the part of the parents, many persons tend to shy away from the fact that this is a reality, and many students are struggling in this regard, also the parents, because in the homes, because of lack of knowledge, again, you may end up that you started off with this partner with you, and the individual may end up leaving you because they're scared, they're not aware of what is coming, how they're going to handle it, and they just need to know then that they're not alone, and that help is out there, and it also is will impact, change, and affect lives, yes, but not necessarily in a negative way. So we have to open up ourselves to change and also to not shy away, but to share what we're going through. And even if we do not know exactly all the truths about it, we can seek help in its own entirety for us to come and try with what we're facing.
So I'll play a little bit of a devil's advocate here, right? As a parent, right? I speak as a parent because I am first and foremost one, and I go through this every day. This is not a turn off, turn on type of situation. It is an everyday thing. And the reality of the situation, if I should ask you this question, culturally right now in Jamaica, or even maybe worldwide, are we ready to accept different? How have we been treating different? When someone is different, how do society see them? And culturally, if we were to leave our children out there in this society, what do you think will happen? Because autism doesn't have a look. Some neurodiversity, it does not have a look. ADHD doesn't have a look. Dyslexia doesn't have a look. They don't know that something is wrong. What they might see is a child who is probably rude, not listening, disobedient. And so it is the fear as a parent, right, that cause a lot of them to be in denial. I am afraid. I am afraid to say something is wrong, because maybe admitting that something is wrong, will cause a particular stigma to be on your child that you're scared to have. That is the reality.
And just to add to what you were saying, that there's not a look. I would want to say, typically speaking, there is a look. Because you can look at a child and you're seeing that child is different. And 9 out of 10 times, they are on the autism spectrum or they are neurodivergent. So there is a look from that perspective in terms of persons who don't really understand. And I think it comes back to how we interact as individuals. So to rally back on your thing about partners, is how we communicate with our partners. Because I might be thinking that my partner would understand what I am saying, but he doesn't. And he may be thinking that I should understand something, but I don't. So I think a lot of miscommunication affects how it is that we help our kids. And in the sense of how it has a look, we look at it from what we see, because the knowledge is not widely shared. So if I look at a child and I see that the child is behaving repetitive or doing things in that repetitive manner, we can say, or we often say, the child is on the spectrum. But that is not the correct way to say it, because as you rightfully said, there is no look. You have to do a sequence of tests, examinations, and those things to come to a final decision. But that information is not readily shared or spoken about. So you have a lot of persons, oh, that child definitely autistic. So if it is like, for example, my child, they may look and think that, they may also think she's also different, but what is it?
But you have different levels of autism, because the spectrum is wide.
Yeah,
Right,
but
so you
persons
have-
still look and think
You
that
have from
they are.
mild to severe.
Right.
On the mild spectrum, it is not necessarily shown. The child looks normal, at times behaves normal, and then masking is a very important thing
That's it.
with autism.
Asking.
Because those on the mild spectrum, masking, some of them are really good at masking. So you can't tell if they're
Autistic or on the
autistic,
spectrum.
especially the females,
True.
right?
Yes.
Especially the females. And for the neurodiversity, it is not just autism. Remember, you have Tourette's. What's the other one?
ADHD,
dyslexia.
Global developmental delay,
Yes, so it's a neurological deficit, not just autism.
Right.
Right?
If it boils down to a lack of education, then
Lack of
Yes,
education.
because again, persons may
understanding.
look and see, and that's often what happens.
Because right now, as a fourth grade teacher, when I got my class in February, I noticed this is a boy in my class, and whenever time he tries to
Remember the
speak,
value.
he's
Volume,
always
volume, audience, please.
he's always just tumbling over his words. So he's telling me about the bottle, he's telling me about the phone, he's telling me about the book, the cup, everything at once. So I would say to him, not in a disrespectful way, but I would say, stop, don't speak. Then we're going to start again. But I kept watching him. I watched him for about a week, and I realized he was showing signs of dyslexia. So I tentatively contacted his mother, and I said to her, I have something that I want to share with you that I've noticed, but I wanted to keep an open mind. So she said I should go ahead, and I started talking to her, and then she said to me, she's so grateful because she too noticed something a couple of years ago. And all the teachers that he went through, nobody said anything to her. And to be honest, that little boy, nothing is wrong with how he looks. And he's brilliant. But then again, I have a curriculum that I'm forced to teach him from that curriculum in terms of how to apply himself, or we answers a question. I remember one day we were doing a book, I think, how Pepper, the monkey, got into trouble. And a part of the story is that the monkey went to the shop and asked the shopkeeper for pepper. He wanted to purchase pepper, trouble. But he didn't realize that it was the actual pepper that is trouble. So when he was answering the question, and the question was asking, what would you have done? He said he would have just given his wife away because his wife could be in trouble. And that was a discussion that I had with. And when I look, we laughed about it for a while, and I'm saying, boy, for him to really think outside of the box like that. So I'm saying, well, you know about wife and all of that. You're 9 years old, But that is his view on it.
Yes.
And I realized when you give him a question and he doesn't know the answer, he's giving you like the method. He's giving you, so if it has anything to do like biology or anything, he's giving you the CQ and stuff like that. But give him a pencil and paper from there to start together, then that's where all the jungling comes in. So the challenge I'm having as an educator is, when will there be such an awareness, this blossoming enlightenment in Jamaica, where we can actually shift the curriculum, reach a balance, have a compromise where we're reaching every student across the board, so all the children, we can actually meet them at the place they are at, because every child can learn. That is my thing.
I think I can answer that question.
We have to get the conversation
Um,
started.
I understand that what's his name? Robert Kennedy Jr., who indicated from the States that by September he will indicate the cause for autism. But the CNN report came yesterday to state that it won't be fully diagnosed in September, but we'll get the information there.
Okay.
I think we're not going to do anything as yet as a nation, as a country, as a region, until we have someone from a first world perspective to say, this is what's happening, this is why we need to make this change, because we all have to cover our behind. We want to make sure what we're doing is in line with, what it is that the world is talking about.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be the first one to try something different, because we have to follow what everybody else is saying. So there's not going to be any change now, because I would want to believe, I've heard that Maya Chong has been advocating for 17 years.
Yes.
17 years. And nothing is done. But now, there is a spin where America, for example, is looking to find out the cause. Maybe after a finger is pointed or a cause is highlighted, we can probably shift. But in terms of avoiding the blame, because I don't think we're a forgiving set of individuals. So if it is I say something to you and it's wrong, how you tell me to do this and it causing more problems and solutions? But it's a trial and error. Just like science, we have to try different things see what works and know how to move forward. So I don't think we're gonna have any changes yet. I don't think we're going to have any. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in to add to that, but I don't see that.
I wanted to add to what you're saying, and at any point, you guys let me know, I'm sorry for my voice. But, I've had experience here, my parents are Jamaican, and I had an experience, cause I worked in, Nigeria for 2 years. Similar, cultural, fear of saying my child is this way, my child is that way. I think it's partially like what everyone is saying, the awareness. Because what they do in America, as I'm trained there and I see a lot of it, like what you're saying, we're looking to places like America, Canada, UK, and saying, oh, they understand the weight. But what the parents from America are doing, they're like, listen, they happily go in, my child is this. You go in with, it's not like, just like what Cornelia was saying, which I wanted to piggyback when you made that statement of like, when you go somewhere, everyone is kind of like, oh, I don't want to say this. But in America, it's kind of like, listen, my child has all these problems, and we're happy. Like my son, I took him to the speech pathologist at 2. I was like, oh, I was happily in the office, like, oh, I think something's wrong. Da, 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 da. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, help me. You know.
Yeah.
But I think what the problem is the awareness.
Yes.
Because when the awareness, like what I told you, when I was in Nigeria, I just started with doing special education awareness here.
Yeah.
And I totally see what you're saying. Even
Yeah.
and again, it's a little easier for me because I'm Jamaican. I grew up with Jamaican parents, so I know. So me coming here, it's a little bit easier than when I was in Nigeria. Because Nigeria, I don't know, and then I had to work it in. But that experience is still gonna help me here with my people.
Yeah.
But just like Danae said, the problem with our people is that they are upset with you. So if I come and I say, well, this, try these things,
Yeah.
right? Remember, I'm not God.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that. So there's a lot of different variables involved in the situation because any specialist can come. And they can be so trained, it's like how you're going to medical school, and you're the best doctor, and you have all the great intentions. And if you come somewhere and you tell someone, whatever specialty you go into, and something goes wrong, it's a possibility.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, as a doctor, obviously you want the person to be safe, you want their life to go on, you want everything. And that's the same thing. And even in special education, I've come here and I've had to tell people, this is what I specialize in. I'm not going to be an ABA therapist. I'm not an ABA therapist.
Yeah.
And this is also the cultural awareness, the special education awareness that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Like, this is what a psychologist does. This is what a speech pathologist does.
Yeah.
This is what a special education teacher does.
Yeah.
This is what this occupational therapist does.
Yeah.
And a speech therapist cannot be doing what and I'm sorry, I don't know if that's gonna make some people a little upset here.
Yeah.
A speech pathologist cannot do what an OT is doing.
Yeah.
A OT cannot be doing what a special education teacher is doing, because this is where the start of the problem is. And people are carrying their kids to these places, and they're spending all this money, and these people don't know what they're doing because they were not trained
In that area.
for that. So me, I tell people, I'm like, listen, I have an understand. It's like going to a doctor.
Yeah.
You can go to a cardiologist if you are having issues with your lungs, but I think I'm gonna go to a pulmonary specialist. That's just me, but if you wanna keep talking to the cardiologist, I'm sure the cardiologist has a general idea, but they went to medical school too, and they probably could help you somewhat. But I think you need to go to this specialist, and that's what's happening in special education. We're not taking it serious to understand that you need to research the specialties, and you need to research whoever you're talking to make sure that person is actually qualified to charge you what they're charging you to do the service they're doing.
Yeah.
And so me as a person, even like me practicing to do things here, I'm very that's one of my biggest things as like an advocate to the parents. Like everybody wants to make money when you run your business, and you're gonna make money, but you can also serve the children. And this is part of the special education awareness.
Don't you think parents also need to be educated? Because I think that's one of the biggest issues.
And that's what I'm also doing, offering parent classes. And I realize a lot of the specialists that do special education, for whatever reason, they're not giving enough information to the parents. It goes back again to saying, just like a doctor can offer a service where they're like, oh, I want to inform the client, so I'll have like sessions or webinars. At the end of the day, you can't do what the doctor is doing. So don't have a fear that the parent is gonna now become an ABA therapist. They can't be an ABA, that's wild.
Yeah.
You know, tell them what they need to do at home. They'll do those things because nobody can go to therapy for 1,000,000 hours a week. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta open up.
That is where we have a block, and we have like there's this block, right? When a parent take a child to the doctor, not knowing the child is on the spectrum, and then they now receive the diagnosis that my child is now on the spectrum. Doctor does not take the time to explain what is autism or what should I do now. You now left with your child, gone home, start worrying and fret. What am I going to do? You know, you don't know the first step to take. You don't know where to go. It's the first you're hearing of this. You know, so I believe that the government should play a more, what I should say? Yeah, a more integral role and help parents and educate them. Put it in the schools. You know, let them do a little short course on it. Put it in the colleges. Put it everywhere so that everyone can know about it. You know, spread awareness from the
Because even in the States, they make us provide the parents documents for every child.
That education is lacking.
Yeah, man, I learn about autism. I know what it is, right? They can even teach the parents.
The reason why I said education is lacking is because some parents.
I've had experience where parents complain to me that when they take their child to do therapy, the child is taken from them, gone into the therapy room with the therapist, they're on the outside, they don't know what's going on in there, and when the child comes home, it's the same thing again. So they keep paying money.
No,
You go and then
you
add to that
cannot
example.
take
But
your
that makes
child
sense.
to the therapist and leave your child alone with the therapist and not looking in and see
yeah,
what's
what
happening.
people say, so
Okay,
I would not
saying
do
that.
So this
But-
is
but-
me
I would
being
not.
devil's
Yeah,
advocate.
I would-
This is me being devil's advocate. I know, for example, I carry my daughter, my son, to a therapy session. But because of the relationship I have with my child, I can disrupt the therapy session. So that's one reason why I understand why it's important for me to stay out. Because you do not want to disrupt how it
That's
is
what I
that
was gonna
day,
say.
how it is that they impart information and help the child. One of the biggest problems that I have is that the child knows how to behave within that hour, within that space. And once you come out of that space,
That is it.
that is it.
That is it.
That
But
is
that's
it.
why notes should be made, like I'll say for speech, because that's what I know. You're supposed to get, like a report or a note, like even when we were trained at school, it's called a SOAP note. Like, different degrees have SOAP note, and then you're supposed to get feedback that way. I will say, in defense of the therapist, that sometimes parents can affect the
Well,
environment
what
because
the-
kids are used
What the
to.
therapists are doing now, they're gatekeeping. So they're
I will agree,
gatekeeping
I will agree,
information.
that's what I was explaining.
So,
Yeah,
it
yes,
is
that's
the
what
world,
everybody
so,
has to
Yeah.
yes, so
Yeah.
that is why we have to stay on the outside, because they don't want.
Well, you're
to show
saying that's
us.
why they're doing it here,
Yeah.
because they're not wanting
Yes,
to
so
share.
they're gatekeeping, so
But
that we
then
have to
they
take
will-
them back.
But they will
So we
do.
can go home.
Exactly.
But
and
they-
get
But
the
it's counterproductive.
But they
yes, like-
facilitate shadows to sit in, but not the parents to sit in. So is it that we as parents have a negative, reaction or interaction with our kids why we can sit in, but a therapist or a shadow can sit in,
No,
a
man.
center
We
can
go
sit
to
in?
bias. So that brings us to bias, right? When the parents sit in, they're not going to, not to say punish the child, but they're not going to be firm. They're not going to, the child is going, like most things will slide.
I have to play devil's advocate. I have to play devil's advocate
They're
and
not
say
going to
something.
be that firm with the
So
child.
let me
I'm
play,
not saying that the shadow is going to be,
I have to play devil's advocate and respond to you. Okay, I'm Jamaican. I love Jamaican people, they're beautiful people, but they're aggressive. Okay, so I gotta say this,
That is true.
because me, I'm very sensitive when it comes to my child. And we're all very sensitive. Whoever's not sensitive in here today, child, don't lie. So the therapist too has to build a connection. Because I'm gonna be on both sides, because I'm on both sides, as a parent and as a working professional, right? And I know today personally, yes, she can be a lot. So if, in a good way, yes, in a good way. So if Danae is coming into session and I'm doing, I know Danae's gonna have comments. So that's where you guys have to take it, because sometimes the person, and you know, I get your angle as well, because sometimes, all jokes aside, people are not doing the practice properly. So this is now the issue, because also parents like Danae are very valuable too, because they're advocating and they're making the situation better for other parents who are a little bit quiet. And maybe they're seeing all the problems and they're like, oh, here comes Danae, I can tell her, because she's gonna go up there and talk to them, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not saying that we shouldn't be like that, but I'm saying that understanding when you do have a good professional, you know, allow them to work. But again, that's the issue right now, in trying to understand who is in this category and who is in this category. Now that I don't have the answer for, especially me, I'm new now to this world here, you know, coming out to see who is who. So that would help with what you're saying as well, is as Jamaicans, like, we go after what we want. So the parents are going after saying, okay, I'm gonna pay you, but I need to come here and see what you're doing, because I know that. So I understand that aspect as well, but they actually need to be with the child, one-on-one, doing what they have to do, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that helped, because that puts us right back to the beginning, but.
But I think for me personally, my child, she goes to behavioral sessions, right? And she's doing so much better. I've been doing this for 3 months. An instance happened recently, and I discussed that with Mimi, and she explained to me that it's okay for the child to have a bad day. But I find it so strange. If she has been doing well for the last 3 months, why is it the bad experiences at that level, where it took that person 45 minutes to calm, you know, reorganize, you know, regulate a particular type of behavior? And that's a form confusing, because, okay, I'm seeing it happening more often now. So it can be a bad day, but it's a frequent bad day. So if it is, I'm taking something from you and you are getting upset, and you're getting angry, and I'm being calm, and I'm talking to you, and you're not listening, I'm doing the techniques, and it's not working. How is it that you're doing good in therapy, but I'm doing the same techniques and it's not working? It cannot be applied in all situations. I can share something personal. Yesterday, I came to Kingston to do a test. I was told that my child should not have had anything to eat. But when I had called the professionals or the entity, they said that she could. Anyways, she had something, so I had to delay the time for the test. So she's very angry. She wants something, and she wants something now. She took up a bottle, and I felt it in my head back while I was driving. But she's upset. She's hungry. She wants something. How do I regulate her emotions there? While driving, I can't stop everyone anywhere. I can speak to her, but that's not enough. How is it that I regulate that emotion? Because I was surprised. I was surprised that her aim was so good.
But what I also want
Very
to
much
say,
so.
that's hilarious. Jasmine's funny. But I would. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I thought it was so surprised. Yeah, but
she's fine.
yeah. And then you know she got some of Mama's personality.
Yeah.
So you gotta give her that too. That's what
right. But like, if
know.
it is that we're trying to regulate based on the techniques that we're taught, when can we accept that we have to take whatever happens and there's so much and no more that we can do?
Just bear in mind, you have the techniques that they teach you, but you have to have your own technique and how you cope and how you deal with your child, right? Then again, yes, and then again, these children that are neurodiverse, they work with routine, and when you take them off of their routine, then it becomes chaos for them because they don't know how to regulate themselves.
Yeah.
You
Very
know?
young still.
Yes, they don't know. So when you took her on the road and take her to that place, don't give her any food to eat. Tell her she have to wait. That is putting a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on her. And you have to bear in mind, just speak with her very calmly. Speak with her and let her know what does that mean. For every step of the way, you would say, okay, baby girl, this is what we're going to do now. This is what we're going to do. All right, we're going to get this. And always give them a reward. Reward them for every little thing.
I don't agree, and this is me, being honest. I don't agree because if I'm an adult and I'm telling my child that you need to stop doing something, I don't need to give you a reward to stop.
There you go. You are thinking like the child is a normal child and not a neurodiverse child.
So that is a problem.
That is a
That's the
problem.
problem
And that is a you
everybody
problem.
has.
No. That is a
The
you
reason,
problem.
the reason why I would say that's different because that is a standard that I now have to accept because she's neurodiverse, which I don't want to.
Acceptance.
I don't want to accept that. I have to give her something to behave a particular way. Is that a standard across the board from the ministry, Early Childhood Commission, the therapists? Is that something because everybody would need to understand that? No. Everyone within the family needs to
what I would
understand
like to-
that that's what I have to do to get her. But not everybody understands that. But then, is that something written?
I
in
mean,
stone that
I
has to be
partially
done?
agree with some of what Danae is saying. I think that this is why we need to work on special education in some countries because when the kid is at school for 40 hours a week, because I've gone to a lot of schools and I'm explaining to them that you cannot rely on the therapy. And they're thinking therapy is school. Therapy is not school. And I think what you're saying is true because as a special education teacher, when we were there, we would use reinforcement systems, we used to do certain things, but like you said, it's true. When you're at home, you do it the home way. And the home way wouldn't make sense because these kids are not completely like what everyone thinks. Like they're gonna understand that, oh, if it's your child, oh, mom's mad, she giving me the look. You know, I've had kids, I've worked with kids with autism for, like I said, since 2015 and before that for language. And they a lot of them recognize the look. So this is the thing but the problem is that what you're also saying about disruption in the schedule, that's valid, right? But at the same time, it's like, we don't also want to teach the kids that, because remember, it's a spectrum. And depending on where you are in the spectrum, some kids, based on my professional experience, where you are in the spectrum, you can understand the home difference from the school difference. And so that now is another situation which comes with time with us accepting special education,
If the child is
accepting.
on the mild spectrum, then you can reinforce certain strategies.
So this is it.
But if the child is moderate or severe, then you can't, and it all depends on the level of the child, right?
In terms of neurodiversity, if it is, for example, my child is not on the spectrum, do I still do the same thing in terms of give a reward? Because to be honest, looking in from the outside persons and me looking in from the inside outside, I think person thinks that my child understands her. She just very strong-willed and she wants to do stuff her way, right? I see that because sometimes when you speak to her, there's a level of understanding, but you still want to be, for lack of a better word, defiant. So how do we gauge that? How do we gauge?
So that is what I was telling
But
you.
is it that the child can control the
You
behavior?
have to have a reward system, right? When the child is doing good, then you reward them. That's what I was just telling you. But when the child done something that is not so well, what you do now as your reinforcement, you can take something and say, listen, not until such and such is done, then you can get this.
Yeah.
Right? Or you take it for an hour.
Alright,
Sorry.
can I say something? Alright, so I have two boys, alright? One is neurodiverse and the other one is not. Methods, same, because they're children,
That's what I also wanted to say, across the board, children are children.
right? Children are children. And the one that is not on the spectrum, you'll be shocked because he responds the same way as the one that is on the spectrum in some cases. He is two, so he's at that weird phase where he's very rebellious. And he says no, and he is just outright with you. No, not doing it. That. No, he's not. But he's two. And he is, and we practice as parents to give our kids choices and allow for them to understand behaviors. So we're not going to beat up on him because he's going to say no, no. What we do is similar to what she said. We find different ways to get through. So you're saying no. I need you to understand why you're saying no, and then we provide you with a choice. So we need you to go outside, but we need you to put on your clothes. But you decide you want to go out there but naked. It's not gonna work. You can't go out there. I'm going to go and beat you and say you must do that. You must. No, 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 no. Because at this stage he is trying to, in his own little way, understand and reason things. And our jobs as a parent is to help him with that. So now we come and we say, okay, you want to go outside? You can't go outside but naked. So here's the situation. It's either you're going to stay inside or you're going to put on some clothes and you get to go outside. Reward in this case, you get to go outside. That is a reward, but he doesn't know it's a reward. He feels like, okay, all right, now he's making the right choice that we want him to make. He's going to put on that clothes and he's going to go outside because guess what? Outside is ice cream.
Yeah.
So I want it.
And the dirty want to jump in.
Yes,
Okay, may I jump in
Doesn't always
here a
have to
little
be
bit, please?
tangible.
no problem.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for this forum where we can, have this discussion. And with a view to ensuring that we now get activated towards, what we really, really want to see happen. And I've listened, and part of what I'm tapping into right now is the reward system, this discussion. And we need not feel guilty or feel that we're doing something that ought not to be done, because we need to remember that each child is an individual, and irrespective of where they are on the spectrum, and if we think about it, children who are not on the spectrum, who are considered quote unquote normal, we still have to put things in place to motivate, to motivate them towards doing the things that we deem best for them in order. So it is something that is done across the board. And I really don't think it's an indictment on a parent if you really have to, put something in place that motivates the child, that stimulates the child towards their own growth and development. Because again, right now there's no handbook for this. And so it is about trial and error. What works best for you? What works best for your child? How do I get through to my child? What are some of the things that I do? Now, let me start out by saying also again to that I was in somewhat of a denial with my daughter. I didn't know when she was assessed. We did not get an assessment until she was like 14 years old. Why? We went each school we went to. We were promised that she will improve. That she only needs to do this. We only need to do that. We work with her. There was nothing like what we're having. So I have a 29-year-old, right? And when the assessment was done at that time, it was also stated that autism was stated there, but my mom and I, we said, no, she don't have any autism. She's just learning differently, as was indicated. She's like a couple of years behind her age, her peers, so like maybe about 8 year deficit there. And so we focused on that, right? And so going into her traditional high school regular, when we found that out, now we spoke to the school and they said, okay, we have a teacher here who is trained in special needs, and having so they claim now that they recognize that there are other students here who are quote unquote again slow learners who may need that assistance. So they're going to set up that class for that. When I picked her up in the evenings, the teacher looked more frustrated than ever because clearly she might have been exposed to some level of, and when you hear people speak about special needs education, we really have to explore what level they do have. And so I mean, it that was not working. And as she got older, I realized that something ought to be done. And that was when I got her tested, assessed rather. And so I had to make the shift. A parent said to me, I was on the PT at the time, and a parent said to me, who was on the PT executive, and she said, we're on the executive together. And she said, I think my child, she had two children, and she said she think because the other one was such a high achiever, high achiever, so she did not want to accept that her second child was neurodivergent. She didn't want to accept that the second child was not like the first. And so I told her I was moving on. A teacher had encouraged me to do the best thing for your child,